So as I mentioned, today's lesson, we're going to start talking about how to embed structs. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to containerize them. You kind of think of it that way. We're taking different structs and we can package them together as a single unit. They call it in Go embedding. And what that allows us to do is really work with the data more so we can use this data in different ways. So it's a very powerful and pretty handy way of manipulating the data that you're working with inside of structs and be able to use multiple structs together in a simple way. So as I type this up, I encourage you to type this with me. And the first part of this, what we're doing here is we're going to build our base struct. So this is our first struct. And after that, we're going to put this into a function. So we need to build a function. We're going to call this function base. And we're also going to have a describe part of it. And then we're going to make that a string. And with this, we're just going to do a return print f. And we're going to say base num, just like in our example. And just as we've talked about before, we're going to use %v. Remember what %v is for, and that's pulling a variable that we're putting at the end. So we're pulling this b num. So we're assigning the var b to this base struct, and then we're pulling the numerical integer value. That's where we're getting this dot notation from. Okay. So after that, we want to take, let me scroll down a little bit so we can see this better. We're going to now build a container. We're going to call it a container because why not? And we're going to have this as another struct. So now we're doing struct inception in a way because we're building a struct with a struct. And we're going to call this base function and struct that we've got. And we're going to not base constant. And then we're going to create a str variable with a string. And why does it always keep doing that? I should clarify. So if we hover our mouse over here, this isn't a variable. What this is, if we hang it out here, we're calling this base from up here. This str, we're creating a new type of string into this container. So these are types that we're putting in here, not variables. Just want to clarify. All right, let's go ahead and build our main function as we do in all of our programs. And with this, we're going to create a variable called co. We're going to assign it to container. And within container, we're going to be calling base. And within base, we're going to say assign the numerical value of 1 to num. And then the comma, that ends that statement. So we'll want to continue on. And then we're going to assign for str, we're going to say some name here, and then we're going to end that one with a comma as well. That's just a formatting thing, so Go knows, all right, we're done assigning that type. So fnt print f, and within printf, what we're doing is we're going to say co equals, and then curly brackets num. I keep wanting to put in num instead of num. We're going to use our %v, which if you recall in our previous lessons, that pulls from a variable that we'll add at the end. And we'll do the same for str. We want to do %v. And then we also want to put in a new line at the end of this. And then after that, we want to say co num, and then co string str. And then ft print line, and also num. From there, we're going to call that co base num. So we're pulling in from that structs. and then FMT print line. And from within here, we're going to say describe. And we're going to call from co.describe. And then let's build an interface. Type describer interface. Within the describer interface, we're going to say describe. And we're going to set that as that interface as a string. And then var describer equals co and fmt line, and we're going to set this as describer colon and then describe. Boom. All right, let's go ahead and save this. Let's run it. So as we can see, our program successfully ran the first time, which is great. Gave us our output from all of our print lines. So let's walk through why we got this information from our programs. Let's lower this down some so we can see some of our code better. So let's walk through this together, make sure you understand it. First, we had to build our base struct. By building this base struct, inside it, we're just saying we want num type, and that type is going to be an integer. Then we create this base function, and we tie it to B, and we're going to use a describe with a string, and then we're going to printf for base with num, and we're going b.num. So it's pulling this B from this base because we set the name here, and num is the type field, and it's pulling that integer. So that's what that function is doing. Next, here's where we start doing the embedding. So we're creating a type container, which is a struct, and we're going to use the base that we built here, and then we're going to add the str, which is a string type. Once we get into our main function, that's when it starts coming together. So all of this before the main function, this is just setup, right? So when we set up this main function, we're saying, all right, we want to assign co variable as to pull from the container. And inside the container, we're going to set the base to base and the num to 1. And str, we're going to say some name. So here we're going through this nesting that I was talking about earlier, where we're going through this embedded and configuring what we want num to be and what we want base to be. So after we do this section, because we're pulling the base, remember, this base right here is what we're pulling from. And we're assigning the number to 1. And we're saying some name as our str. So when we do this, that's how we're getting co equals num1 and str equals some name. That's how this is all coming together. Then down here, we're saying co.base.num. So this is another way of walking through this whole section. We're calling the base function and we're calling the number field out of the base. So we're pulling this num value out. That's how we're getting this also num1 here. Now, if we go down to describe, we're pulling the describe section out that we assigned up here. And with that assigned, now we're seeing the description that we added here of base with num equals, because we set it as num1 here, num equals 1. Similarly, with the describer interface that we created, we pulled the describe function that we have up here and set it as a string, just as we have above. And then we put it all together. var d describer equals co, and that's where we got our describer base with num, because we're calling d.describe, which is d is our variable, and we're using the dot notation to pull the describe. So that's how our embedding of structs work. By all means, this stuff, especially if this is the first time you've done it, it takes a little bit to get used to it. So please play with it. Change some of these names around, build your own, embed your own structs, and just use some simple FMT statements to create your own print lines. That way you can see how you can manipulate the data and change how you're calling it and stuff, because this is a very powerful and useful concept to understand. All right, well, that's it for struct embedding. I'll see you in our next video when we talk about Go generics.